Hi, I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning on our introduction to Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors, presented by Pleasant Valley Business Solutions, PVBS. Today, we're going to take a look at multiple ways to manage direct and indirect rates and unique reporting capabilities of Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors, along with balance sheets, cash flow statements, project performance, and other areas as well. Just so you know, the webinar is being recorded, and we're going to post this to our PVBS YouTube account later today. If you have any questions, please post those in the question section, and we'll try to get to those as we're moving along. If we cannot get to your question, we will contact you separately. Later today, you should receive an email invitation to take our post-webinar survey. We would really appreciate your feedback to help us make this a better learning tool for everyone. So please take a minute to answer a few questions for us. We really appreciate that. Now, today's agenda for the webinar will include a brief introduction about Pleasant Valley Business Solutions. Then we're going to jump right into a demonstration of the product. And if we're able to, again, we'll answer questions as we go, so don't hesitate to get those questions out there. Otherwise, we'll try to save a little bit of time at the end to answer any follow-up questions we have. Okay. Pleasant Valley Business Solutions, or PVBS, is a top-tier Microsoft Business Solutions partner serving only the government contracting market. Our headquarters are just outside Washington, D.C. in Reston, Virginia, which gives us a unique access and insight into the GovCon community. So as an experienced leader with over 12 years of success in the government contracting market and an intelligent innovator in the Microsoft systems, PVBS is a direct resource to both the government contracting and Microsoft communities. So a couple things about the Dynamics NAV. Again, we're going to look at the product. So to understand, it's a rich, robust accounting solution, completely compliant with federal rules and regulations, and provides complete integration and ease of use. PVBS is driven to develop excellence in providing the most comprehensive solution to our customers and our partnership channel. So with that, another news about the Dynamics NAV, there's over 1.6 million licensed users, so it's one of the larger groups of Dynamics.
Yeah, actually, it's the largest, the most widely used product in the mid-market in terms of business software. So not only within Microsoft, but within all service providers. So it's really exciting to present it today. And Damon, thanks for that initial introduction on our organization and also on Microsoft Dynamics NAV.
Right, thank you. You want to talk a little bit about the vertical partnership?
Yeah, so just to give you a little insight, Microsoft, they do everything through a partner channel. Even the work they do with the federal government is through partners. And what we've done as a business is, this was probably about 10 years ago, we decided to focus our organization specifically on companies that sell to the federal government. Those organizations come in many shapes and sizes. So large organizations, we've got clients with $1 billion plus in top line revenue. And then we've got clients that are also, I'll say, more emerging companies, 8 to 10 million. So one of the things that makes it unique is that ability to scale. But what we've done is really focus our business on the government contracting industry, and we've improved Microsoft Dynamics NAV around the things that a government contractor needs to run their business. So everything from compliance. So we'll talk a little bit about DCAA compliance today. We'll show you how those components are baked into the system. Also around reporting and invoicing. So whether it's government formats, the DD-250, standard form 1034 and 1035, your public voucher, those type of things have been improved by PVBS for the Microsoft Dynamics NAV solution.
So again, this is Paul Skorupski giving a little overview, and I appreciate that. Paul, he's our VP of Sales and Marketing, also one of the founding members of PVBS. He's been writing a lot of blogs about government contracting for many years, and they're available on our website as well. Worked with thousands of government contracting companies. And so Paul's going to take over right now and do the demonstration of the product. Again, if you have any questions, please post those. If there's something that you want to see, let us know, and we'll try to get that for you. So
all right,
Paul,
thanks,
let you take over again.
Thanks, Damon. And that was Damon Scott. He's our Director of Marketing. Damon brings a lot of experience, both from a systems perspective and also government contract perspective. And I'm excited to present the Microsoft Dynamics NAV solution to our listeners out there. And like Damon mentioned, if you have questions as we go through, please feel free to, you can raise your hand in the profile, and then we'll collect some of the questions. Some we might answer through the presentation. I would say that most we typically save towards the end. What we're going to do today is we're going to start out with a general overview. I'm going to give you some insight into how our clients are using the application, and then we'll go into some specifics around elements related to reporting for government contractors. So I'm going to go into 3 places today. The first spot is inside of the Role Center, which is the home page for somebody within the accounting organization. So I'm logged in as an accounting manager, and what I'm seeing are critical elements related to my job. So activities like reviewing invoices, timesheets, and expense reports. These are little workflow stacks that allow me to see how much is out there for either me or my staff to perform. Each one of them gives me the ability to drill into it to get into additional detail. So in this case, here are the 4 expense reports that have been submitted and approved, and accounting is now responsible for taking that last step, which is to verify and also to post and record that payment to the employee. So you can see when I get into the detail, I can see information regarding the charge codes in terms of what type of expense it was, the project and WBS that it went against, and then details, descriptions, the actual expense itself, when it was submitted, when it was approved, and also any attachments related to it. So allowing me to easily get to the information to answer questions, and all being in one place. So you don't have to go offline, to other systems or go to your paper files to get answers on your questions. The bottom left-hand corner, integration with Outlook. So I think a lot of companies and individuals are familiar with Outlook and have used it before. This is not replacing Outlook. It's just another way to view those Outlook components inside of Microsoft Dynamics. Each one of these little boxes gives the end user some configuration options. So in this case, if I wanted to not show my mail, I can choose to do that. I get a lot of emails, so sometimes it can be distracting, so we're going to go ahead and hide that. I can see multiple days in my calendar, or similarly on the task side. The top right-hand corner, I call this the My section. So this is where, in my demo system, I've got probably 250 different jobs. Here are the 5 that I go into in a lot of presentations. I put them on my home page so I can get quick access to them. By just double-clicking one of the records, it takes me into the detail of what's on this particular job, 1014. I'm going to show you in a little bit actually how to set one up and some of the capabilities around it. While I'm here, I do want to touch on this status box because it's one of, when I think about what Microsoft is doing, they're starting to drive innovation beyond what's been available in the past. And I think one of the challenges that has been regarding getting to information. I'm going to show you a lot of different ways on how you're doing that. This is the first example. This status box is like online real-time information regarding this particular record, in this case, job 1014. I can get the information about the contract and funded value, AR balance, commitments. Anytime you see one of these numbers with a line underneath of it, means I can drill into it. So I can actually drill into those commitments against this project, which are open purchase orders. It gets me to all the detail. So whether it's materials I purchase or I have subcontract agreements, I have visibility of those expenses that are going to be coming in the future. We want to plan for them, and I can get to more details if needed by clicking the Show Document button. And now it's giving me, kind of the details that from the original purchase order. Similarly, I can get to those other elements through that same drill down capabilities. And also on each record, there's also a note-taking ability, kind of like instant messaging. I could say, Damon, please review this project, we'll say. And then I could send it off to Damon inside the system, notify him, and it's just another way to communicate. So now once I say, okay, You can see there's the note that I sent off to Damon with this spelled incorrectly. So that tells you this is a real presentation. There should be an S on there. But Damon can double-click that and actually get to the details if needed. That kind of gives you an idea of the concept of the home page. It's specific to role. It's also configurable by end user. When I go to the department list, this gives you insight into all the different modules, all fully integrated. And when I talked about different flavors of government contractors, really what I meant is in terms of those micro vertical industries they focus on. So most of our clients are professional services organizations, so project accounting is core to what they do. And then with any organization on the accounting side, it's all about financial management. So everything from GL, AP, AR, fixed assets, inventory if needed. For companies that are managing products, whether you're a VAR distributor to the government along with services, product contracts helps you to manage that workflow process. If you're a manufacturer of goods for the government, there's a whole project manufacturing workflow. So what you see is really rich, deep capabilities across the enterprise for an organization. That's what's happening inside of Microsoft Dynamics NAV. The second component, the folks on today's call, we noticed that there was about 75% that were professional services. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the web time and expense and the web reporting designed for your PMs. So this is the portal where your PMs and supervisors can go to a role center to get key information about their projects or people, information like missing hours. We're supposed to enter our time every day. So I can get at a glance who didn't enter their time yesterday. I can also get an email triggered to me. I can get information about funding alerts. Each one of these is also drill downs built into it, so I can get to the details of what projects have hit 75% of funding used. Notifications. So we talked about a notification inside the accounting system. This is a notification from this web portal. Information that I need to approve, in essence. So expense reports, purchase requisitions, PTO requests. When I'm identified as an approver, I get notified when it's my step in the process, and I can approve or reject those requests. And then if I reject them, let them know why in this case. Maybe James cannot get vacation. Maybe he doesn't have PTO, or we're overbooked during that period. So I can let them know why. Real-time utilization. So this includes both time posted in the accounting system and also what we call unposted time. So I'm getting a real-time view of both my utilization and then everybody that reports to me. In the top right-hand corner, this is getting me into details regarding budget versus actual information. So if I go to, this is my assignments is just for me. All assignments is when you're a project manager, you can look at the details of your projects, all people that are working on there. So budgeted and actual hours, real time to date used. This is the place, again, when you think about it, this is kind of more the project management operational side, getting to information about my projects and people, including a series of reports, everything from ODC type reports, utilization reports, and overall project status reports. So to run one of these reports, I can either schedule it or just go to my home page and actually get into the reports specific to my role. We'll talk about some of these reports in a little bit. One of the other, so from the web portal, there's a series of reports. Also, each module has its own set of reports. So if I go into Dynamics NAV, each one of the modules has its own series of reports. So you're going to see reports both from a financial perspective, operational perspective. Then the last piece is the executive dashboards. The executive dashboards, you can either use, a business intelligence front end like Cognos or Hyperion. A lot of our clients, the back end of the system is SQL Server. It has analytics built into the database. So you actually can use, in this case, we often have clients that use Excel as the front end, and connect to that cube of information, and I'm able to display that and provide it to different people in the organization. So everything from a set of financial views. So this is a dashboard that's giving me a general business overview, so a trend of my revenue, profit, and AR. Balance sheet with its key metrics, so I can run this for any period in time and get a quick snapshot of, what does the balance sheet look like. Same idea with the income statement. So it's giving me both current period data, year-to-date data, and also in this case, trended information about the year. We use a component inside of Excel called Spark Lines to give you that trend right inside the cell next to the description. In this case, I can see how is my direct labor or gross sales trending. If I move over to the right, I can see the details behind how did that trend get initiated. And then Damon also talked about indirect rates. So a big component of what our professional services clients, especially the ones that have cost-type contracts, are looking to do is better manage their indirect rates. A couple different views outside, kind of more of a graphical picture, and then there's a statement of indirect expenses for each one of your pools that is inside the application with drill down to detail. But these two views are about showing me a trend of how my rates are running. So in this case, in my demo system, I've got a fringe, overhead, G&A, and subcontract material handling pool. I'm getting visibility of how are the costs being accumulated, so both from a pool and base perspective, and how are my rates running, actual compared to provisional, and seeing that data trended. And then that's kind of like a monthly view, and then this is kind of more of a current period and composite year-to-date view. So giving me that real-time information at my fingertips so we can make adjustments to our indirect spending to make sure that we maximize revenue and profitability on our contracts. It's not just about the financial picture. The other piece to it is the project view. So we've also got standard project views, and these are all standard views. So any of our clients that use the Excel dashboard, these are ones that we set up for them out of the box. And I think that's a big differentiator, is that instead of each one being a custom setup, which is the way it is for a lot of applications, this gives you a starting point to give you some of those key metrics. On the project side, it's information like your project income statement or the job status report, labor reporting, your ODC analysis. Also, my favorite one is this burn rate view. So what this is giving me is a combination of that project status report combined with information about how we're using funding against this project. So in this case, I can choose one particular project, multiple tasks if needed, and then I can see details, month over month, information about our revenue and how that's trending, all of our operating expenses, giving us details regarding our net income or loss, then what was spent. So that's how much the funding had been used. And you can see when I select any of these cells, the formula bar is showing me how that data is derived. So there's no information being keyed in. It's all being, in essence, pulled from the accounting system and time entry system into this cube of information. So this is telling me, look at this cube value called total spent, filtered by whatever period that I looked at and any particular project for a particular company, because you can have multiple companies running inside the application. That's going to give me visibility of the total picture for my project. Then I'm showing a little bit of a trend of how that funding is being consumed, and then based on the average burn rate, dividing that by the remaining funding, in this case to tell me that we've got 9.5 months of funding left. And anyone that is tuned into the contract and project management side realizes you need to inform the government when you're 60 days out from being at that 75% mark of funding consumed. This gives you some of that predictive analytics to let you know, when am I going to be there? So I think these are key tools for our clients to really mine information, because I think that's one of the differentiators is that in these systems you're putting a lot of data in. How easily can you get it out? Those are some examples. I guess the last example I'll show is that not only do we have standard views, clients can build their own views, and then there's also an ad hoc component to it. And the way to think about that is, kind of building a query on the fly, in this case resulting in some visual representation of data. When you look over to the right, it dynamically creates a pivot table, this data cube does, and I'm showing some of those key measures. So in this case, job budget information. So everything from labor cost, material cost, revenue, subcontract cost and travel. The job ledger is your historical project information. Everything from AR to billings, indirects, labor, ODCs, purchasing, revenue, travel costs. We also have unposted data. So data that's not been processed through the accounting system yet, I actually have visibility of it inside this cube. So it's giving me both information that's accounting specific and data that hasn't reached accounting yet. Anything I want to report on, I just grab it and drop it into my value section. So in this case, if I want to report on revenue, I can choose that as a measure for reporting. And then typically in my rows is how I'm grouping things. So if I want to group it by contract or customer, by division, by PM, you just choose the measure you want to report on, type of client, what department. So any one of these measures can be the way that I group it in this case. Let's look at division, kind of looking at things at a little higher level. Here's the divisions within the organization, the revenue across periods. And now in the columns, I can decide what are the specific periods on how I want to group the periods of time. So we'll go into our posting periods and looking at things by calendar or fiscal year. Maybe I want to look at it by month, look at it by probably not day. That's probably a little bit too much analysis. Maybe quarter. Quarter seems to be a measure that people think about overall performance. So here's my quarterly measures. And then if I wanted to reduce this subset to look at just certain divisions, I'm just going to choose 3 of our divisions to analyze. And now we're getting a quick trend of revenue within these 3 groups. And then everybody likes colors. So let's add a little color coding to it to quickly highlight which areas are positive or negative. And then if you wanted to add some type of charting, you can quickly add some type of chart onto that view. So this is giving us a quick trend of, within our divisions, what is that revenue trend across the organization. And it doesn't stop here, and that's what I like about this, the ad hoc component of it. You can actually leverage those other measures to drill into it. So I can drill into federal and look at federal at different levels. What are our federal customers or contracts or PMs? Just select that level you want to drill to, go to that measure, and now my analysis has changed to now look at, within federal, what are our contracts, what's the revenue on those contracts. And you can continue that down to getting to the detailed level. So in this case, from contract, maybe PM, and then now from PM, if you want to look at individual projects, just select that individual PM. It's going to get me to the project level here. So really, analysis on the fly, you can look at it at detailed or higher levels, and really just the drag and drop capability allows me to get to information that's important to me and not have to rely on either the back office staff or rely on IT to get me this type of information. Because I think what's happening is today's world, things change so fast, people need information much quicker. So those are the 3 pieces, Damon, that I think are core to what our clients use. And what we'll do now is kind of get into more of the project pieces. But I think a good question before.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I love the Microsoft products, and I love Excel, and that's one of the things that kind of drives me to this. I mean, the question you're going to ask is as far as what Microsoft products our audience is used to using. So we do have a little poll real quick that we were going to bring up, and just if you wouldn't mind just selecting some of the areas of Microsoft products that you use. Obviously, a lot of folks are probably more familiar with Office, Outlook, Excel, Word, PowerPoint. Microsoft has a pretty good hold on that, but SharePoint Project and even CRM could be a little further behind. And again, I mean, that's probably one of the things that for me is a great differentiator or selling point is the fact that it's the Microsoft product. You use other products like Outlook and Excel, and it's just integrated with that. It's very similar. It's very easy to use. So anyway, let me share the results here. We've got over 80%. See if I can do this correctly. Share that. So you can see the results again, up 100% on the Office, which we figure 55% on projects. So there's a lot of folks out there using Microsoft projects, and we showed how to look at projects when you're within Microsoft NAV for Government Contractors.
Yeah, and I think that we won't go into it today, but I think one of the differentiators for Microsoft is how well they work with these applications. So we're not going to go into Microsoft Project today, but it is integrated with Project. So it allows people to really sync information from a WBS perspective, also hours and costs, and then manage the resource management side. And I think those are things that people look to do, is not have to rekey information from one system to another. I think to talk a little bit about some of the automation that Microsoft Dynamics NAV provides, it's important for us to get into elements regarding the setup of the application. So where I want to touch on a little bit is in relation to setting up projects and where we help with automation. So the back end, as I mentioned, is SQL Server, and what we leverage is the fact that it's a relational database.
Hey, Paul, before you continue,
yeah.
Just want to address a question, just in case this is on anyone else's minds as well. Question came up as far as what accounting system is needed to use this tool set. So I want you to address that real quick.
Absolutely. So what we're showing today is Microsoft Dynamics NAV, and what it is it's a full enterprise system. So it incorporates accounting into it. So accounting is a component to the system, but it's all fully integrated. So if I go back to that department list to give people a little insight into what's incorporated into here, it is the financial management piece. So everything from the general ledger and financial reporting through the receivables and payables. And then it's incorporating the project accounting side. So managing your projects and people, all integrated with the financial side. So there is no rekeying or duplication of data, all integrated, all working in sync with each other.
And I think the important thing is that it's one system. It's not a bunch of bolt-ons or add-ons or anything. That's just one system.
Yep. So what we were doing initially, and it could have been a little confusing, is kind of giving you a high-level picture of all the components, but behind the scenes, it is this one integrated system. We were just kind of showing 3 different ways of how people use it. I'm going to get into the accounting piece right now, and we're going to talk about project accounting. But we were looking at it from the operational accounting view, which is inside of NAV, the employee view, which is the time and expense and reporting, and then the executive view, which is the dashboard. So I'm going to go back into the accounting system, and we're going to talk a little bit about setting up projects and some of the automation that to help companies to manage the billing and the time entry side. So this is setting up projects. Each project, you're defining your internal project number, the client you're doing the work for. Anytime you see this little gray box down, I'm looking into that list. So I'm setting up the defaults for this project, including what type of project it is. In this case, this one's time and material. So when I go to the contract tab, this is information regarding the billing aspect of the project. So everything from defining, can we bill our ODCs on this project? If we can, is there a markup? Is there any withholding or not to exceed? So I'm defining the defaults on this job, And then below that job, you've got individual task orders or delivery orders that might get issued. From here, I can look at the individual task orders to see information regarding what type of task it is, because you could have a mainly T&M contract with a firm fixed price task, or it could be a cost reimbursable contract that has a T&M task in it. So it gives you the flexibility to manage contracts the way that they're awarded. And then I've got information regarding the POP, the period of performance for this task, contract, and funded value for the task. Within that, in this case, $40 million and $29 million of funding, there can be one or multiple funding mods. In this case, I've got several of them. If you needed to add a new mod, you can just go ahead and add it in. So I'll just say this is mod number 85, and then identify when did it come through. So I can key the date in. I can also choose from the list. So maybe it came through last Friday, and we'll say it was a $400,000 change, and it's fully funded. Now once I say OK, this actually accepts that change, and now you can see that detail regarding the funded and contract value for that task. Now it's 40 and 30 million, and now once I accept it at this level, it updates the overall job. So this is one of the areas, in terms of tracking, that you're identifying whatever that funded ceiling is, because you can't bill over that with the government. You're also not recognizing revenue over it unless you've got an at-risk task that your business process says you're going to recognize, over that funding ceiling. You can also manage the document side of it. So Damon talked a little earlier about SharePoint, and I know we had, it was like 25, 30% use that. We see out in the field that a lot of people are using SharePoint, and one of the things that it allows you to do is actually take documents and emails. So in this case, if I have a document associated with the funding change, I can drag and drop it onto this particular job, 1014. It drops it into SharePoint, and now it links it back to this document. So I can actually open up whatever that document is and get to the details of what's inside of it, or an email. So no longer is it residing on a person's local machine or on your file server. It's actually getting saved over to SharePoint, and now I've just got access to it. So the idea is, to build not only the compliance pieces in it, but the workflow specific to the way companies operate and the kind of information they need to get to. So that gives you an idea of setting up the details of it. And then even below that task, there's a full work breakdown structure. So if you need to manage funding by CLIN or Akron, you can get to those details and really report back on the invoice to give you the information that you need. So now when we talk about automation, so today was kind of an overview. We're going to talk a little bit about compliance and automation. One of the areas of automation is regarding how tightly this integrates between the accounting and project accounting system and also time entry. So once I've defined that project, I start to assign people. So this is my labor workforce and where I'm assigning people to projects. Once I choose somebody to work on the project, and I could just search by either the name or number, so I'll just choose a resource. We'll say I'm adding Paul Berg as one of the associates to work on this project, and he's an engineer 2 on here. Once I've assigned that person to the project, it automatically assigns that individual to the time entry system. It makes it available for them to charge to. It also, because I'm doing full resource assignment, it's restricting it so I can only charge to the codes that accounting assigns me to. So that reduces errors. So there's 2 pieces to discuss here. It's the automation in terms of integration and the fact that the assignment prevents errors. The second piece, because this is a T&M contract, is to define that pricing. So if I go into my resource price list, here is, for job 1014, our labor rates by labor category and effective date. So a lot of systems don't give you that date field, and because of that, you've got to manually go in to update, that T&M billing amount. So by having it now, I can enter in those rates one time. I don't need to worry about the fact that it changes in the middle of a period, because in Dynamics NAV, it brings it in detail. So in this case, for 1014, I just set a filter to show me the PM labor category code and what it bills at. I also have the ability to copy in from a contract, so it could be your GSA contract or some other type of government-wide or organization-wide schedule. And now I'm looking at it just for 1014. If I wanted to put the data into Excel, I can hit Control-E or use my Send to Excel function to send that data off to Excel. So any list or ledger that's viewed inside the accounting system, I can send it off to Excel, and we'll pull up that document. And now what you're going to see is that same information that we had in NAV is now transferred over, and that was sent over today, in this case at 11:34. And then I can actually update it in Excel if needed. So I just add a few more lines for, I guess this is a multi-year schedule. We want to put in those rates out to 2024. And now I can go in and just copy those bill rates that I set up in Excel, and then we'll just go back and paste it inside the accounting system. And by doing that, oops, I guess I grabbed the wrong cell. Let me go ahead and copy this here. And it just, actually, that's a good example. It gave me an error to tell me that, even though it's a copy and paste, it still does the verification. And what it said was I had the exact same date in there. So when I copied it, I copied the wrong line. So let me go ahead and copy the top one. And then we'll go ahead and paste those rows in. And for some reason, copying the wrong cell.
Okay, it's always good when the machine tells you that you're not adequate to handle the process.
Exactly, exactly. But, there we go. So I'll just go in and we'll do that copy and paste here. Okay. So that gives you an idea of how you can take that data from Excel, put it back into NAV, and it does that verification. This is a good example of when you make a mistake, it's actually helping you catch that mistake.
Point it out to you.
Yep. So now I've defined the bill rates. I've defined the people working on it. So that helps to automate that process of generating the invoice. From a time collection perspective, we're not going to go through all the details regarding collecting time and expenses today. That is actually set up for another webinar. But what we'll do is I'm just going to touch on a couple of the compliance pieces on the time and expense system. So from a timesheet perspective, the two big things from a compliance perspective is about electronic timekeeping systems require, one, if anyone makes a change to a previously saved cell, so in this case, if I went back to Monday the 15th and realized that it should have been 3 hours on that task versus 4, I'll make the change, but the system's requiring that I document, why did I make that change? So we'll just say there was an error there in typing, finish, save it. That's, from a compliance perspective, one of the components. The other thing is about time entry in advance on certain types of charges. So if I try to charge my time for tomorrow and tomorrow hasn't arrived yet, it actually is going to prevent me from doing that. So a couple things that help keep you out of trouble from a compliance perspective on electronic timesheets. The system also has a floor check option on the electronic timesheets. In case you go through a floor check audit, it can submit and or produce that report to give you details about who didn't submit time yesterday, or I should say enter time yesterday, and you'll get the full details of that list.
So while you're talking about this, an interesting question came up, and I hadn't heard this before, so I'm actually interested to hear the answer myself. I hate to put you on the spot here, but I'm going to read the question. So Deltec Timekeeping had a computer breach earlier this year, and what does PVBS Timekeeping do to prevent this type of breach?
Okay, so I guess the first question becomes, Microsoft has different, what we'll call delivery methods in terms of how you can procure the software. So if you have it on premise, you can have it within your own infrastructure and then have the level of controls built into your own infrastructure to prevent people from breaching your data. Yeah. Right. So the second option is the Microsoft hosting is through one of the federal host providers. So it's CAS 70 compliant, FedRAMP compliant. So there's a lot of security built into that. So I can't answer the specifics about what do they do, to prevent a breach, but I can tell you that they actually do hosting for the federal government. So the level of security is different than it is for commercial businesses. So I think that's one thing that helps, to prevent those type of things.
Okay.
All right, good question. So that gives you a little bit on the timekeeping side. And then what's happening from there is once that time has been entered, saved, and submitted, then it gets processed inside the accounting system. So from the accounting system perspective, the automation and the overall workflow helps reduce manual steps. So a couple areas where we do that is, one, talked about that missing time report that included the floor check option. And then importing the data in allows you to take all those approved entries, bring it in for labor distribution. The system handles, effective rate, standard rate, and also dilution methods. And then we've got integration with payroll providers. So we've got a strategic relationship with ADP. One of the things that we offer as a free component is the integration component for ADP, also for Paychex and payroll networks. And then because the way the license is structured, a lot of our clients leverage the ability for subcontractors to enter time inside the accounting system, or inside the time entry system, and then it'll actually split off all the subcontractor entries into POs, send your employee entries off to payroll. There's also a payroll system built into it, so it helps you to automate the things that sometimes are done manually. From there, once you've got all that time entered, now you're processing invoices. And this is another area where the processing leverages the SharePoint capabilities that Microsoft brings to the table. So there's a function to create the invoice, and then from there it creates what they call an invoice worksheet or a pre-invoice that someone can review, and then we'll go ahead and print it just to give you a little insight. And you can print it in different ways. So print it by resource, which is employee name, or print it by labor category grouping. Print the WBS, the CLIN or the ACRN, break out the tasks. So a lot of different ways to print your invoice, but what you're able to do is preview it locally, make sure that everything is the way that you expect it. And now once you want to have it approved, if it has to be approved outside of accounting, you can send it off for approval request. And what it does, it sends an email to the approver. The approver can then review it, and decide to accept or reject it. You can see this one is pending approval. And then once it completes that process, it goes into what we call a posted document. And one of the nice things is these posted documents can be printed as many times as you want, and they can also be printed in different ways. So I can print it not just multiple times, but each time I can decide to choose other options. So if the customer says, normally you send it by labor category, but can you send me the detail in terms of who are the people that charged? I can then choose by resource and maybe break it out by task if they were interested to see it a little bit differently, send that off to them, and now I don't need to worry about trying to do things offline or manually do it. I can do it all within the system. Other invoice formats that we support are not only the standard NAV ones with options, but also government formats. So your DD-250, the material inspection form, the 1034, and the 1035, the public voucher. So those type of things are built into the application to help companies to, again, not have to do those type of things offline. And I think this takes us to a good point, to get a little insight into, what applications people are using today from an accounting perspective. Let's go ahead and put that poll up there to get some insight there.
Yeah, and we've had customers that have obviously come off of different systems, Microsoft NAV for government contractors. So we know there's a lot of different things out there available.
Yeah, and I would say that the majority, if I look at the last 10 years, we've migrated, probably somewhere in the range of 70 to 90 companies off of Deltek, a lot off of QuickBooks and other what we'll call introductory systems, but really a wide variety of companies.
And hopefully we've got a couple of folks out there, I guess, that are using Deltek now, and hopefully they were not a victim of that data breach, but looks like we're about almost 70% done. Let me go ahead and share this information.
All right.
So it looks like we have a lot of folks on QuickBooks.
So a mix of QuickBooks and Deltek users on today's session to learn more about Microsoft Dynamics. So I think those are a good group of people that are often become clients of ours.
Okay.
All right, so we talked a little bit about invoicing and some of those standard formats. And now the thing that I want to touch on, we've got two pieces we want to cover still. One is regarding some of the compliance elements to it. And then the last thing we're going to touch on is a little bit on the financial reporting side of things. So from a compliance perspective, I talked about electronic timekeeping and that ability to be compliant on the timekeeping side. One of the elements that sets NAV apart is its ability and flexibility to manage your indirect rates, and also from an incurred cost submission, help to automate components of that ICE submission. So I want to talk a little bit about your indirect rates and how it comes into play, the management of it, and then we're going to touch on some of the reporting pieces. So this is where your indirect rates are managed. It's a setup option. So the way to think of it, it's kind of like a big calculator. So it's as simple or as complex as your rate structure. In my demo system, I've got a fringe pool, 2 overheads, both a company and a customer site, some contract material handling, and G&A. So depending on how your business has been defined, the system can incorporate and manage it that way. Other thing to note is, like I was just talking with one of our clients that's looking to make some changes. They are moving from Deltek to NAV, and one of the things they want to do is go to a rate structure that's really partially contract-driven, because they've got, depending on the type of contract they're going after, the fringe rates can be different. Obviously, the overhead rate can be different. So they want to have a set of rates by contract. System supports, flexible options in terms of managing your rates. The thing I've found is that for every contractor out there, there seems to be unique ways on how they want to manage their rates, because it's really about how do you maximize your business, both winning new business and driving profit and revenue based on your rate structure. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of how rates are managed and some of the automation behind it. So the first step is you're defining your rate structure. In my demo system, I've talked about how those rates are set up. The next step is identify how the rate gets calculated. So what the government says is they want a logical and consistent method of how you're going to allocate your indirect costs. So having automation helps ensure that it's going to be consistent. The system is going to pool together certain costs. In this case, for this overhead pool, it's going to accumulate costs within a range of accounts, in this case for certain departments. And then my base, in this case, is a direct labor account, but your base can also be non-financial accounts. So direct labor, instead of just dollars, it could be direct labor hours. It could be square footage for your facilities pool, computer usage. We've got clients with a lot of different options. The chart of accounts, it supports unlimited number of statistical accounts and obviously unlimited GL accounts within your structure there within the range. I guess it's a 20-character alphanumeric field. The next step is, once you define how the rate gets calculated, you're identifying how those costs get allocated. So this is telling me, once I've accumulated the costs, do they go out to projects, or it could be an intermediate pool where they're going to get allocated into another account to be later picked up. But in this case, they're going out to projects at both a provisional and actual rate. And anybody that has cost-type contracts understands the importance of tracking both the provisional and actual, so you can make sure that you keep the variance within whatever your focused range is. And then there's the last step, which is defining what the provisional rate that has been approved for billing. And then once you get your final audit, that final rate plugged in. So the system is going to bill at your provisional rate, your indirects, or you could have budgeted indirect rates by project. And then once you've got your final rates, there's two things that you can do. One is the true-up of those costs. So I can go into my allocate cost function and use my final rate once I've got that to do the final indirect allocation. And then in terms of your billing process, on the billing worksheet, which we talked earlier about that process of generating an invoice, go ahead and we'll go to our invoice worksheet process. What you're able to do is there's a process within that billing function to generate your year-end invoice. So that helps you to, whatever the variance is, the system calculates it and creates an invoice or a credit based on if you over or underbilled the government. So not only helps keep you from a compliance perspective, the system, but in this case, automate some of those things that you might be doing offline today. And then the final piece that we talked about related to indirect rates is we mentioned the fact of managing it within one schedule, and then I think anyone that's had to submit an incurred cost submission, this probably looks very familiar, which is your incurred cost electronic document that the government created. And what we've done is we've connected the NAV data cube to this that allows somebody to actually automate the incurred cost submission. So what you're looking at, this view right here today is schedules A through H, and you can see when I select any cell in my schedule, it goes back to that same type of view where it's looking at the cube of information. In this case, schedule H is your detailed project information. So it's showing me by contract information about my labor, travel, materials, ODCs, etc. So each one of these cells points to a particular job, and it's looking at a certain type of subtype, in this case, labor. So it helps to automate, the creation of the schedule. So this is a big one for clients, helps them to do, once you define the ICE document, it's going to automate the creation of it, saving people sometimes 2 or 3 weeks worth of time. So that's a little piece about the indirect rate management, both the allocations, the billings, in this case, one of the end components related to your incurred cost submission. We touched on today reporting both from an executive dashboard perspective. Actually, let me go and we'll touch on project management reports real quick, and then we're going to go into financial schedules to talk a little bit about some of the financial reporting capabilities. So we're going to go back into our role center, and we're going to talk a little bit about that project status report that we mentioned earlier. So one of the things that when you set up projects, we didn't get into all the details of them, and anyone interested in a detailed demonstration, we're happy to do that on-site or over the web for you. But what you're able to do is you assign a project manager to a project so they can only see the projects that they manage. And then when they go to their list, they're only seeing that list. Then they're going to select an individual project they might want to review, or they can schedule it for delivery. We're going to run that report, and we're going to give it a minute to process. And now we've got that information regarding this project. We've got details about the direct labor with my different labor categories. We've got information regarding our ODCs. And one of the things that you're seeing is not only, again, posted information, but this column for obligation is what we call unposted data. So not only unposted labor, which just looks at timesheets that haven't been processed yet, but also obligated other direct costs, which would typically come from your purchase order module inside of Microsoft Dynamics. And then we're also incorporating budget data. So helping to deliver information to operations, without that intermediate step of accounting having to prepare reports or create them for you. And then they can download them if you want them to into Excel, PDF, or different standard formats. So it's not just a tool for accounting, also operations and PMs and the executive team can get access to key things they need to manage their part of the business. The last thing we want to touch on, Damon talked a little bit about financial reporting earlier, and the system has built-in financial schedules. They're built inside the application, and because of that, what it allows you to do is actually drill into information. So I can print any of the schedules, but you can also run a schedule and actually drill into the detail. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to run this income statement. Put the right year in there. And what you're able to do is I can obviously go down to the bottom, to get to the bottom line in this case, what was for the current period and year to date. But I can also drill into any of the expense transactions to look at the details behind it. So in this case, our subcontractor amount for the period was $3,800. I can get into the detail of the one or multiple transactions that makes up that amount. And then there's actually something called Navigate built into the system, which allows me to drill across the modules. So in this case, I'm going from a general ledger entry of a subcontract transaction to the original invoice that got posted with any notes over here potentially. I could look at the job ledger side. So the government wants to make sure that, the detailed subledgers, everything is tying out. So when you post something, it hits all the ledgers in real time. You don't need to worry about anything being out of balance. So that posting of the invoice had a GL impact, an AP impact, and a project impact. I can look at each one and the details behind it. So in this case, the AP impact was there was multiple things in that PO that totaled to $4,500. Remaining amount is zero. I can get into the detail of the payments that got applied, then go from the payments all the way over to the bank account. So for that auditor at heart or anyone that is an auditor, you can get to the details quite easily without having to go in and out of modules. And really, when you go through that testing, make sure that each transaction, you can get to the details as required. So just to give you a, kind of a quick sense, I'm just pulling up the list. So everything from balance sheets, indirect rate analysis, your cash flow, income statement, all those built into the application, but also as an end user, you also have the ability to tailor those views, to add more or less detail. So that kind of gives you a little insight into Microsoft Dynamics and gives you an idea of why people are switching and really some of the key advantages of the solution. So I guess we've got time for just a couple questions, and I'm just going to pick a couple out of here, Damon, if you don't mind, just
sure.
to yep. I'm just going to answer a couple that have been put on here. So we've got a question on the top-level dashboards. See that there's travel and expense included, but nothing under HR. Do you have any payroll functionality or plans to add it? So there is a full HR and payroll modules inside the application. And then so we didn't go through those today. We also, like I mentioned, integrate. But if companies want to have it in-house, you've got the options to have that in-house. So really gives you the flexibility there. Question about time frame. So the question was regarding we're looking at changing applications for 2015. How long does it take to implement this system? And really, that's a tough one to answer. But I just want to, the reason why I want to touch on it is to give people an idea of the range. So depending on the size and complexity of your business and how much data you want to migrate determines the level of effort. And we've done it as quick as 45 to 60 days. Our typical implementation is about 90 to 120. So there is a fairly wide range of choices there.
Okay. Yeah. And I think it's, just wanted to, while we're talking about that, we actually have a financing available for smaller companies that are looking to move up. $99 per month for the first 3 months and low monthly payments after that. Very competitive rates. Qualify for in less than 2 hours. I know there's some folks that want to probably switch over by the new year, so this is a great opportunity. Sign up by the end of the year, and we'll take care of trying to get your project implemented and help you with the financing as well. So with that, we just handled the questions and answers, and so we have a couple more webinars coming up. We have some that we do for industry. These are educational. We have one in October, one in November. October, we're forecasting fiscal year 2015 federal contracting trends. And November 19th, we have a special guest from Department of Homeland Security who's actually going to talk about doing business with DHS. That includes all the umbrellas like FEMA and ICE and Coast Guard and all the others. So you can find that information on our website, pvbs.net, at resources. And with that, we thank you. Paul, you have any last words?
Yeah, no, we really appreciate your time. We focus on getting people out on time. I know there's a bunch of questions in the queue. We will follow up with you. We promise that someone will get back to you either today or first thing tomorrow to answer those questions. And again, thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.